Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, Sofia Smallstorm returns to the show. Sofia will discuss how the current form of government at the federal, state, and local levels is a corporate structure and not representative government. She will then explain how this corporate system of commerce intentionally operates in a deceptive manner in order to contractually obligate you and me into their world of corporate fiction and thus robbing us of our sovereignty. Our conversation was wide-ranging, and we cover a lot of ground, including how the corporate contract apparatus could have played a major role in the Sandy Hook event. And so without further ado, here's Sofia Smallstorm. Welcome back to the show, Sofia. As you know, it's always a pleasure having you on. And I know that you had Anita Whitney on your show recently, and the discussion that you guys had was about the corporate government and how we are operating within a system of commerce, and it's all contract-based. And as you know, I spent over 30 years in the corporate world, and one of the things that always struck me as I was in the corporate world was seeing the parallels between how a large multinational corporation operates and how the government operates. And if you spend any time in a large corporation, it's almost impossible not to see those parallels. So I was wondering if we could just expand on that topic a little bit more. And I know you've been looking into this and doing some additional research. And if you could tell us what it is that you're finding, or even your thoughts and some theories that you have perhaps on what's going on.
Well, thank you, Mike. I will try. It's all new for me. I mean, I had heard this concept that our government is a corporation before, but I never understood the real guts of it and what it really, really means in our lives. And so when I did the show with Anita, she has really plumbed this, Anita Whitney, and maybe you'll link to that show. She used to be a legal advocate for children, so in the court system. And she started learning about the real nature of the courts and, by extension, the real nature of our, not just our federal government, but our local government as well. And when I did that show with her, so much became clearer and clearer. And I feel you and I have often talked about how futile it is to try not just to wake people up, but to bring change about. And you go to your city council meetings and you have your 2 or 3 minutes to say something, and everybody just stares at you with glassy looks. They don't care what you're saying. You know, there's all this stuff that's happened where I live in Southern California. Like, we had a super duper fluoride treatment plant go on in our little municipality, which has its own water district. And that wasn't even revealed to the public until after they opened it and started adding more fluoride to our water. And I learned now when I talked to Anita why this happens. So I'll just start at the beginning, and I'm going to skip some very big swaths of time just to lay the groundwork out for this show. So in 1871, the federal government became a corporation, United States of America Incorporated, and that was included with Washington District of Columbia Incorporated, and that is effectively the mother corporation of what is a federal corporation franchise system in the United States. So by 1933, all the local townships, agencies, city of Encinitas, where I live, city of whatever, where you live, those are incorporated as well. And this was sold to the officers, the public officials, I'll call them. They were sold on becoming officers of a corporation instead because of personal liability. For instance, if you slipped and fell in the town of whatever, and you got an injury, you would sue, because that has become popular. But would you sue the mayor? Would you sue him personally? Would you sue the person who had poured the concrete for the sidewalk personally? No. So in order to protect themselves personally, they were encouraged to embrace the idea of incorporating their city or their agency so that that could be sued and they could be personally protected and not made a part of the lawsuit.
Right.
indemnified. So the idea also was that once you incorporate your city, then any money that your city has in its coffers can be invested. You can actually do business. You're not there as this, this is public money. We can't do things that we want to do with it. When you make it into a corporation, then you can do anything you want with it. The idea is to grow and prosper. So once these cities became corporations, the whole purpose of corporations is to do business, as you well know, and you do it all through contracts. So corporations are bound by the laws of contracts, and everything that our cities and towns do now is through and by contracts. So what does that really mean in our lives? And here's where Anita's insight, or her way of boiling it down, really hit home. The government agencies and the cities and towns are offered corporate grant contracts for improvements and developments in the social and urban and community context. So people think mistakenly when they see a big, skate park go in or a community center in their town, they think that's taxpayer money, but it's not. It's not. It is money straight from the New World Order. It's just digitized and rolled into accounts. And I have now seen this more clearly in my own world because I saw a $42.5 million beautiful community park get put in one of the local cities here. Took 14 years to build. It has 2 gorgeous swimming pools, a splash pad, a skate park, a dog park, basketball courts, electric car charging stations, picnic tables. It's used for concerts, and it smacks of Agenda 21. This kind of thing, $42.5 million, was not paid for by taxpayer money. It was New World Order money rolled at the city of Carlsbad, put in a special account, which is part of that CAFR that we've heard about. And this thing was built over a period of 14 years.
Now, the CAFR, Sophia, would be the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report account?
Yeah, I think people throw the word CAFR around like it's a fund. And we've been told, activists and researchers have been telling us for several years, well, City of Stockton, California, it's declared bankruptcy, but look in the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which you can find online for any city, and it's got millions of dollars in there.
Yeah.
What the hell? What do you mean you're bankrupt? And all these cities are telling us, we're broke. We don't have money to fix the roads. We don't have money for the schools. We have to raise taxes. We have to start getting more money out of fines and permits and licenses because we don't have enough money. And you look in the financial report and there's gobs of money sitting there, millions. So I asked a friend of mine who had a very high up position in, as it happens, the County Board of Education. I said, do you know what the CAFR is? And she said, sure, I know what the CAFR is. I said, well, is it true that when you look in the CAFR, there's millions of dollars there? She said, yeah. I said, and why are these agencies and these cities and these districts of this and that telling us they're broke? She said, all right, let me explain it to you. So the way she explained it was money has to be set aside. These projects and programs take time. So let's say that such and such district wants to, let's go higher. Let's go to the level of the state. The state of California wants to have a conference about Common Core education, right? So you can't have the conference next week. You have to have it 3 years from now. So you set the date. Then you have to figure out who is going to speak, who is going to attend from your various districts, where is it going to be, how much are you going to pay for the venue, what are you going to pay for hotel and flights and cars and banquets and catering and printed materials to advertise and publicize that you're having this conference. And that all takes money. And that money is calculated. And if the project is going to be paid for by a grant, then that grant money, straight from the federal government, is going to be put in a fund and held in reserve. So what the CAFR reflects is reserve money for special projects and programs, because you cannot plan this thing and then 3 years from now go, okay, where's the money? We need to write the checks.
Yep.
You have to set the money aside in advance and you can't touch it. So that's why there's millions of dollars in these CAFRs of all these broke and bankrupt cities. And this money is not taxpayer money necessarily. It is money coming straight from the New World Order.
So they can't use this money, Sophia, then for day-to-day operational use is basically what we're saying.
This is the money, in my belief, that is paid to roll the New World Order right into our lives in Agenda 21.
Okay.
I don't believe that $42 million dog parks, skate parks, swim centers, community centers are paid for by taxpayers. They're paid for because that's going to be our consolation prize, Mike, when we lose our private homes and backyards. They're going to say, why are you upset?
Yep.
Go to the community park. Look how huge it is. Picnic tables, and you don't have to mow the grass.
So they could be broke then from the perspective of day-to-day operations, running a town, as an example, paying salaries and so on. But with these CAFRs, that does not go into day-to-day operations. And like you said, this is more strategic, long-term types of planning, and that funding is coming from outside the taxpayer, and it is to implement, as you were saying, an Agenda 21 agenda.
It's to implement planetary changes. And I'll explain. I've been doing some thinking. So I've been hearing Red Ice Radio a lot, and Henrik always does shows, regularly I should say, on how Sweden is changing. And I learned from one of his videos, actually, he does special videos too, that there are 600,000 ugly shoebox-like apartments being built in Stockholm to accommodate all the immigrants from Africa, the immigrants from Asia. Many of them are Muslim. They're coming from, these third world countries into Northern Europe, and they're doing the same in Denmark and Germany and all over, as we know. So the people are allowed to think that this is taxpayer money because it increases the resentment. But it's not taxpayer money. It's New World Order money. And these houses are being built because they're going to look like paradise to people from Somalia. Now, what's happening in Spain? Friends of mine who live in southern Spain told me that Malaga, the city, around Malaga and through southern Spain, there's a 100-kilometer road that just went in. And Spain is bankrupt, by the way. Beautiful road with bike paths and scenic views and this and that. And the city of Malaga is all being restored to its original Moorish architecture. Well, who is this for? It's for immigrants from North Africa who are going to feel very comfortable and very at home with Moorish architecture, who are going to love roads with bike paths because they don't have cars anyway and aren't used to them. What's happening to the people of Spain? They're basically standing in bread lines. They're economically losing ground, and they're going to be sidelined in all these Northern European countries. Same will happen here. The community parks, the look of the land is being completely changed and refaced to admit a whole different kind of people. They're swapping global populations, and it's being paid for by banker elite money. And then when the white people here are disenfranchised, as the more Latinos come in, as our professional class turns into Asians, you go to San Jose and you watch those buildings at 5, 6 o'clock. Oracle Corporation, Google, this, that, and the other thing. Who comes out of the doors? It's all Asians. So the nature of the technical worker population, that whole level of society, is now being dominated by other cultures and other ethnicities and races. And I learned from Dr. Daryl Hamamoto, when I interviewed him, he's a professor at UC Davis, Asian Studies, that they are swapping out the professional class in America. Whites are going to be sidelined for Asians, and the welfare class, blacks will be moved out of the slot, and it will be Latinos. And then they will start race wars between Asians and Latinos, because the Asians will be resentful that their taxpayer money is supporting all these Latinos, right?
Yep.
So, but it's not taxpayer money. That's the beautiful thing. It's other money. It's New World Order money. So the New World Order, I believe what's going to happen in Europe is, in time, maybe not that long, the native residents, the native populations of the European countries will be told, you can't work in your country, it's overrun by immigrants. Well, we've got jobs in the third world. We've got jobs for educated people with degrees and skills. We need to buttress up the social infrastructure in the third world. There's jobs in Somalia. They pay really well. And so you'll see this complete shift of population groups, and it's effectively an interlacing of all the world's people.
Yeah, I was saying before the show that because I worked in the corporate world for over 30 years, I was seeing that model implemented. They would take their highly skilled resources here in the United States, especially their management, and they would tell them that, we have a deficiency or a lack of that skill and resource in these low-cost countries, these emerging markets. So they would shift those jobs. They would take the American workers, especially those that were in management, and they would take them and they would move them into these low-cost or emerging market countries, and that's now where they work. And so it's taking the resources, and it's just I don't know if this is the right word, but it's almost like a harmonizing. There is no United States anymore. We don't have these boundaries and these walls anymore. Everything is one big soup bowl.
Right, and there's money behind it. So we've all become addicted to fiat money.
Yeah.
No one can get enough of it. Everybody wants to prosper. Many people would say yes to a job in a foreign country. I know plenty of people who've been working in Saudi Arabia.
Well, and they're paying them a lot more money to do it.
Exactly, because
Right.
that money, once you make money out of thin air, then everybody can, there's plenty of it, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government doesn't care that it's trillions in debt because it's a corporation operating on fictitious money, and it's throwing that fictitious money down the pike at all these, what I call them fishies and guppies at the bottom of the funnel, who want work. So they'll be happy to build a big Agenda 21 park, or they won't know that this is going to be where they take their kids to play when they don't have backyards and they're living in smart growth housing above grocery stores in downtown blah, 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 Right now, what I learned from the interview with Anita was that the federal government is going, hey everyone, we have, $500 million for 10, I'll use the fluoride treatment plant as an example, 10 super duper fluoride treatment plants in 10 cities. Who wants to be the first in their state to have this? And so every city goes, oh, we do. And they bid and compete for these corporate grant contracts. And their city engineer might give a description to the city council, which votes on it. Nobody ever understands what this fluoride treatment plant is really going to do to the physical health of the people, because they've heard from the CDC, fluoride is great. We should have more of it. So it gets a signature, maybe the city manager. The money is paid, and then the public gets to know. And once apparently the money exchanges hands, it's already done. It's too late. We've got to learn about it when the application is still being made by our city, but we never learn about it at that point. So the bankers throw money at our cities, and we've got any number of developers, builders, you name it. They want these federal contracts because the money is really good. You can charge the federal government $500 for a toilet seat when it only costs you $20. 50 toilet seats at $500 a pop, and your profiting by $480 on each toilet seat, that is going to give you money for your boat, your kids' college, etc., etc. Your home on the lake, you know? So this is how it works. We're all addicted to this fake money. And I said to someone the other day, I've been reviewing this with friends. And incidentally, when I call up my very educated, awake, alert researcher friends and I say, do you know what it means, this corporate government thing? They don't know what it means. They don't know it on this level, that this is how the world is being changed. This is literally how the face and shape and body of the New World Order is being painted and brushed into our landscape and lives. It's coming through federal money borrowed by the trillions from the banks, offered, through all the, you could call it like the network of blood vessels to all the cities and towns and agencies.
Yeah, I tell people that the money itself is the contract. As soon as you accept that money, you accept the terms and conditions that come along with accepting that money.
Right. Now, there is some recourse, you could say, and doesn't seem to be a lot, but number one, if we could tell our elected officials that, I don't even know how to say this. Apparently they're already told that they don't work for the public. And some of them have been as bold to tell the public when they're confronted by the public, we don't work for you. They are officers of a corporation. If it's someone who works for the city in the capacity of, public works where they deal with sidewalks and drive a truck and do stuff, physical stuff, plumbing, they are hirees of a corporation. They're not public workers at all. And the people, the officers, the mayor and the city, whatever, attorneys, they're not public servants at all. They are officers of a corporation.
Now, some people get caught up with this because when I've had conversations with folks, they'll say, well, what difference does it make if it's a corporation? And I say to them, well, a corporation is beholden to shareholders, a board of directors, stakeholders. Are you any of those entities? No. Okay, well, then they're not looking after you. They're not looking at things on your behalf. They have to fulfill their agreements and their contractual arrangements with those shareholders, board of directors, and stakeholders. They come first, and maybe you'll come into the picture later on, and that's only out of the goodness of their heart.
Right, but I think people still believe that all those faces and warm bodies serving in that corporation do care about what the outside world is going to look like once they have served and while they are serving. And I don't think that's true at all.
No, I don't think that's true either. I think that to some degree, the people that are involved, some of them honestly believe that what they're doing is the right thing because that's how it's been packaged. And everything is very compartmentalized. But you're exactly right. There are others that are involved in this process and sitting in those rooms in those city council meetings who know exactly what's going on, and they know that what it is that they're doing is not in the best interest of the public.
There are people installed to gloss things over, to misrepresent or brainwash people who represent very effectively without understanding themselves that they are not describing the true nature of these projects and programs. But I said to someone recently, if we could change the intent at the top of the pyramid, we could reverse the look and nature of life so quickly. We could use the fiat money. We could dole out millions and billions in fake digits made out of nothing, and we could change everything.
And do good.
And do good, right.
Yeah, you and I talked about this, and you're absolutely right.
So right now, we are, our cities and towns are staffed with people, whether they're well-meaning or they get corrupted a little bit along the way, corrupted, they're stuck. They can't listen to us and they can't work for us. And that's the problem. And the New World Order may be packaged for them so handsomely that they think they're doing a good thing. And when they help a city to prosper, for instance, I believe, this is my personal belief, that when you set money aside for a project or a program, you might try to do it on the cheap. Something that's supposed to cost 30 million, you might try to do for 25 million. Then you can take that 5 million, you can invest it. You can put it in your pension funds. You can do a lot with it.
Yeah, well, that's why when you go to a lot of these towns and you try to get some change implemented, they will tell you things like, that's not our policy, that's not the process. And what they're talking about is, that's not our corporate policy. That's not the process that we have within our corporation. Now, the person telling you this may not understand this completely themselves, but that's where it's emanating from. It's corporate policy, it's corporate process. This is what is being administered to and how the people are being governed.
Right, through contracts and through
Yes.
commerce. Now, I'm going to bring up something else because, you learn something and you go, okay, how does that relate to such and such? So I started thinking about Sandy Hook. And oh my God, my brain was firing like crazy. I realized the Sandy Hook school shooting was contracted for years in advance. Newtown was chosen. It was populated with the players, Sandy Hook especially, with all those families that acted so fake. That was all part of the script. Newtown must have gotten a tidy sum to build that flashy firehouse, which they told the public was, it's going to be our main firehouse. Why are you putting it in that dump, Sandy Hook? Well, its real purpose was to be the hub for this event, which was a FEMA, Department of Homeland Security capstone event. And Department of Homeland Security is a corporation. It is one of the 450 United States agencies. It's part of the United States corporation. So there were tests that were being run in this capstone drill, ongoing tests, teams and partners used. This is all corporate talk. And money was paid. Handsome sums were paid to people to be part of this. And same with all these shootings. Same with all these false flag events, Boston bombing, that was contracted for. That was an exercise. All these exercises, these capstone events, are all paid for by contract.
And this would explain, I guess, why it is that so many people don't say anything. One of the conspiracy debunking discussions is that somebody would say something if this were false or if it were orchestrated or engineered. How come nobody's coming forth and talking about the fact that it was engineered or orchestrated? How does that stay under wraps? So I guess your premise would be that they're under contract?
That could be, or they simply don't know. For instance, the Sandy Hook Elementary School, why was it so decrepit? Because part of the contract was to tear the school down. Why did all those people who demoed the school have to sign more contracts? Non-disclosure, we'll never discuss anything. And now the $150 million that's been paid to build a new school, which will be the template for future schools of America, it's going to have tremendous police state policies, bully monitoring, and we won't even know, Mike, if anybody goes to that school.
Yeah.
We'll just be told about it. And we might see reports of this happened or that happened at that school, but these might be fictitious as well, just to model all the agendas. So I haven't replumbed the depths of Sandy Hook in these terms, but I can tell you that these capstone events are contracted for years and years in advance. All those houses could have been government houses. There's a government agency called SIRVA, S-I-R-V-A, and it stages houses for government employees. For instance, if you're a government employee and they send you over to Panama to work in some project, they don't expect you to go and find a school for your kids. They will do it all for you. Here's where you live. Here's where your kids will go to school. So same thing with Sandy Hook. And now everybody, those families, they've all moved.
Yeah.
Contract's over. That part of it for them. Going to Washington and lobbying was probably another part of their contract.
So this is very interesting, a very interesting perspective on Sandy Hook, this whole contract aspect of it. So how many people, you probably don't know the answer to this, Sophia, but I shouldn't say how many people, but what would the construct look like? I mean, in other words, who would be tied into this contract? What organizations,
Well,
functions?
all the organizations in the pyramid of resources, the teams, obviously, with, as I said in my Sandy Hook, unraveling Sandy Hook in 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions, each team, resource team, is a little pyramid in and of itself. So only the people at the top know the true nature of the event. And everybody else has to participate per their training. It's a real life exercise. But they don't all know that. The ones at the bottom, like the EMTs, were not allowed near the school because if they all went to the school looking for dead kids, they would know too much, right?
Yeah.
So they were held at the firehouse. So there needed to be a flashy firehouse, which could be on TV, and it would look like something was going on there. So within each resource, each partner team, highway patrol, hospitals, coroner's office, police, etc., etc. Now, somewhere I learned that those 4 police that responded to the first 911 calls from the school, allegedly, they weren't ordinary police. They were the same guys who appeared apparently in Boston, the Blackwater or whatever guys carrying the backpacks. They were seen at Boston. Remember that?
Yes.
So they're obviously resources and assets themselves. So they know, but maybe other people in the Newtown police did not know. Lower down within that pyramidal construct of the police. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the coroner would have to know, right?
Well, that's why he bumbled the way he did.
Right.
But not everyone in the coroner's office would know.
See, that's where it gets a little dicey, though, right? Because not everybody does know, but I guess somebody could argue that, but there's got to be some bleed through. In other words, where the people that know versus the people that don't know, there's got to be something in between where somebody is suspecting that, you know what, this is not what I saw. I didn't see this. I mean, that's not the conversation that I heard, but that doesn't come out. So how do we explain that aspect of it just being stifled and suppressed?
Mike, it could be that people are so extremely uncomfortable. But that is a story that has gotten so much attention. I mean, it has become like a 9/11 event in America.
Yeah.
And sure, you may not have seen something, and or you may have, and your mind bends it. For instance, I wrote in my photo essay, my Sandy Hook adventure, and then somebody made a little video out of it, which is on YouTube, that I had a tour of the firehouse by a very nice fireman, and I asked him if he, I was shaking my head and saying, oh, that terrible, terrible tragedy, and he said, yes, it was awful. I said, well, did you see children that day? And he nodded and said, yes, I saw children. Now, I didn't ask him, how many did you see? He might have seen 3 or 4 children and assumed that that's all he saw. But they were there, and they were representative of children. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, very compartmentalized.
If they really went to Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
So is he in his mind going to go against the whole story and publicize that he was there and this is not what he saw? I think people become so extremely uncomfortable. They know something's wrong. They keep their mouths shut till maybe years later.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, Sophia, is because I am playing a bit of devil's advocate, because these are the questions that get asked, and I'm just trying to see if we can cover some of these questions and get some perspective around them. I agree with you, by the way, 100%. I just got done interviewing Ole Damagard, and Ole talked about the 2011 Norway attacks, and what he has uncovered there is mind-blowing. It gets right to the core of the depth of the conspiracy. And I guess I won't go into much because this show is not about that, but I'm going to ask my listeners to take a listen to that show. If you think of what we're talking about here is not possible, or that it couldn't go off this way, or be this, you couldn't have this level of orchestration or engineering, then go take a listen to that show and take a listen to what Ole has uncovered with regard to the Norway attacks back in 2011 in Oslo.
Now, I'd like to bring up something that I thought about very recently, and I'm trying to work it out in my mind. And we talked about it in the pre-show discussion, you and I. But, this idea of the straw man. So we all have a straw man. Whether you're born in America and you receive a birth certificate, or you're naturalized, you become a citizen that way later in life, they make this legal fiction out of you. It bears your name, and then you are approached by agencies that are all corporate, and you are asked to contract with them. And the moment you sign your name, you have created a joinder between you and your legal fiction. So when, for instance, you sign up your kids for school, you register your kids for school, what you're really doing is giving the state your permission to join your children with their fictitious legal selves in that setting. And so your children are subject to all the New World Order policies, and whatever they decide applies to schooling. When you register your kids for homeschooling, there it goes again. You are signing them up for any policies that that the government will apply to homeschooling. You see what I'm saying? So the power of signature. And when I believe, this is my new theory, I have not found evidence for it, but I'm just thinking. So officials and important people involved in these events, anyone, in fact, who signs a contract, and FEMA puts out contract after contract after contract when you participate in an exercise. There are forms that you are told you behave this way and this is what's going to happen, and you arrive at this time and you sign. So I believe that it could be that creates a bifurcation between your real human self and your fictitious self. And it's the fictitious selves involved in these events. And they are, as long as you proceed with the rules and adhere to the mandates of the corporate fictitious entity that's conducting this event, it's only your fictitious self that's involved in it. But the moment you depart from the procedures and policies of this fictitious entity running this event, and you act as a whole, original, real person, they'll come after you.
Yeah, and most people, many people, virtually everybody, cannot distinguish between the fiction and the real person.
Right. So we ask ourselves, how do politicians just boldly lie through their teeth and deny that they ever did this or they ever did that, or they have these reprehensible behaviors in their personal lives, and they'll just deny it. And I think that's because when they get into trouble, let's say somebody is exposed or somebody finds something out about somebody, and the powers that be tell them, look, they're accusing your fictitious self. You answer in terms of your fictitious self. Your fictitious self is a dead thing, this straw man. It can't have sex with anyone.
Right.
Can't do anything, and it can't do anything wrong. So it's always protected. So if you can speak only in terms of your fictitious self, you can answer the question in the negative. You can totally protect yourself, because that entity is capable of doing nothing.
That's a very good, very interesting way to look at it. So because they are a fiction, it's like saying a corporation is a building, as an example. A building can't have sex.
A corporation is actually a legal construct. It's not even the building.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to simplify it for the audience, but yeah, right.
So a legal construct is an organization, articles of incorporation. It's a bunch of rules on a piece of paper. It cannot have sex. It cannot order any event to happen. It can't do anything. And as someone who has signed a contract and become part of that corporation in the context of your own fictitious self, you too can get off scot-free, because you're only and always talking about your fictitious self.
Very interesting, Sophia. I mean, it's a very interesting way to look at it, because, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself of all these times these politicians have stepped up, blatantly lied, and nothing has happened.
Right. And someone asked me the other day, she said, how do they sleep at night? I said, because they know. They know that They answered for their fictitious self because only that is called on the carpet.
Right. And when you think about it, if you said to somebody, look, if you respond this way, nothing can happen to you because you're staying within this construct and this parameter, and within that construct and that parameter, you're safe. So, like you're saying, so they stay in that box, and that's how they interact, and that's how they respond.
Now, let me put it another way, because I'm just trying things out.
No, go ahead. It's
So
great.
let's say you're president of the United States, and the public finds out that you did some really gross stuff personally. Well, as president of the United States, you're a fiction. Whatever you did as a real human being or do as a real human being, it can't even touch that outline that they've given you as president. So the president doesn't do anything. He too is a legal construct. You see, so it doesn't matter what you've done, because anytime you're asked as the president, did you do this, Mr. President? No, I didn't. And this is why they call them Mr. President. I was watching this film, which I sent to you, and it's all about straw man. It's called The Nature of the Cage. It's just released in England. It's on YouTube. But whenever you're referred to your name in capital letters or Mr. Williams, this is the sign that they're addressing your fictitious self. So when they ask you, Mr. President, did you do this? Well, if a reporter asks you that, Mr. President doesn't even exist. It's not Bill Clinton, William Jefferson Clinton. That's a whole different thing from Mr. President.
Interesting, and as you're going through this, I'm thinking, let's take a look at some major debacles by large corporations. Let's go back to the Exxon spill in Alaska,
right,
or the BP oil spill in the Gulf. And if you take a look at what happened there, who went to jail for it? Who was punished for what went on there? And to the best of my knowledge, no one. And that's because those people are protected by that corporate fiction.
Right. That's the 1886 case, Santa Clara County versus Union Pacific Railroad, when the corporations were awarded personhood protections and personhood in general. There's a lot to that case. I learned from someone that the clerk entered the opposite ruling. The ruling, in fact, in the court was A, and the clerk entered B on the record and falsified the ruling because the clerk had been a former employee of Union Pacific Railroad. So he was compromised, and that was all set up. But very few people know that. We're told that the court ruled in favor of corporations, and that was the beginning of the corporate personhood. But yeah, people are held, protection against liability. This is why you incorporate. You protect your personal assets, your personal property and wealth.
Well, that's the point I was going to make, going back to BP and Exxon. It defaults back to this fictitious entity called a corporation. They get fined, let's say, $1 million, $2 million. Everybody who was involved in the decision-making process that created the problem is still there. They go about their merry business.
Interestingly, I'll tell you, the Exxon Valdez was a single hull boat. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and if it had had a double hull, this would not have happened, most likely. So they started with double hull tankers after that.
Well, the point being, too, is if you and I went out and, because of whether we did it intentionally or unintentionally, and poisoned drinking water, as an example, we would go to jail for that.
Well, sure, unless we contracted with the water company and we were an quote-unquote employee of the water company and we poisoned the water. And then it would be us through contract that did that. And it wouldn't be us, the person,
right,
responsible at all. So I think this is what happens in these offices, that when they reveal or it becomes revealed, of course, all that is strategic. They'll throw dirt at whoever they want to. And now let's bring up whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are crossing the line. When a whistleblower exposes something that their agency did, they are immediately beaten up really badly punished because they are not operating as their fictitious self. They're not going with the flow of falsifying, fraud, lies, pretense, deception, blah, blah, blah. They're acting as real people.
Plus, they're most likely bound by that corporation's confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements or contracts that were signed. So they would be in breach of those contracts, right?
Right.
So as an example, we had the recent CDC whistleblower. That person was in breach of contractual agreements or arrangements that he agreed to with the CDC.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm just talking out loud here.
Well, I sent around an article recently about the juvenile court in San Diego emancipating a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Ostensibly because she was more competent and capable than her mother, who didn't speak English, has moved back to Tijuana. And this girl got pregnant at 15, and she has a baby now. And she needed to take care of her kids. She needed to continue her education. And she couldn't do this without signing. So this is where the power of our signature. And the article itself mentions that you have to have the power to sign contracts. And this is why your parents sign them for you. So when you're 18, you're presumed to be mature enough to sign contracts for yourself. I don't know if actually an 18-year-old normally rents an apartment, but a 16-year-old certainly doesn't. But I'm going to just read to you from the article. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something. They are actually promoting early emancipation. Juvenile court tells teens about it. There are pamphlets about it. Teens hear it from each other, and they all want it, right? Who wouldn't? My God, I can be an adult. I can drink at 16 instead of 18. I can drive. I can, you don't have to be supervised. Well, you can drive at 16, but you know what I'm saying. I can rent an apartment. I can move in with my boyfriend. My God, this is what I want.
Right.
But right now, they're only emancipating the most responsible teenagers who need it in order to function. But it says here, under most circumstances, minors are considered to lack the capacity to enter into binding legal contracts. That's a family law attorney who wrote that to the reporter who wrote this article. And you can post the article if you like, but it's about this young woman, Sherry Sotelo. So once you become emancipated by the court, you can then rent an apartment, you can borrow money, you can do anything you want. Now, it's true that it costs $430 to get emancipated through the court, and most teenagers don't have that money. But interestingly, legal aid will pay for you. The state bar might support you in this, the county, a private foundation. So this tells me there's an interest, Mike, in liberating and emancipating teenagers early. And why might that be? So they can sign contracts on their own behalf. And why might that be? So that they will be consenting to being drugged, pharmaceutical drugs, and sex. And this is pushing pedophilia.
Wow. Yep, I think you're onto something.
So this is a whole new terrain that I have stumbled into, and it's very new for me, and I'm trying to think about it on all these different levels. And I see these things, they pop up in front of me. Articles like about this 16-year-old getting emancipated by juvenile court early. And I'm thinking, what? Why? And when the article itself says, so that she is capable of signing contracts on her own behalf, and then I hear about the corporate government, contracts rule our lives.
Oh, yeah. Everything you do is a contract. Everything you do. You buy something, it's a contract. Use a credit card, it's a contract. Your driver's license is a contract. Your social security number is a contract. Everything is a contract.
Right. And what's sad is that the contracts are all through this legal fiction that we are, and that the legal fiction is more active than we are as real, live, flesh and blood, oxygen-breathing individuals, practically, The legal fiction connects us with the rest of the world, all of our activities.
Yeah, now the problem we have is, and let me just put this question out there, maybe we can just chew on this a little bit, but some folks listening to this would say, well, okay, I understand what you guys are saying, but so what's the problem? So how would the world be different if it wasn't contract-based, if it wasn't commerce-based? So how would we answer that question?
Well, first of all, I want to bring up this Hammurabi's Code, which I had asked you if you heard about, and I had heard about it. We hear a little blip, and that's the only piece of Hammurabi's Code that most of us know, and it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Everybody who hears Hammurabi, eye for eye, this is all they put together, but that's not really what it is. The Code of Hammurabi comes from Babylonian days, and it is actually 1754 BC. It's one of the oldest deciphered writings in the world, and it was the sixth Babylonian king, Hammurabi, who enacted this code. And it was written on a big, like a monolith, just like the Georgia Guidestones. It's inscribed on one of those. It's called a stele or stele. It's like a slab.
Yeah.
And clay tablet. So the code consists of 282 laws with scaled punishments. So it's a code about adjustment, and that's a very important element to contracts. So one of the king codes of Hammurabi's laws is this idea that only equals can contract. So you cannot make a contract with a 5-year-old or a dog because it's not going to know what it's, if you take the dog's paw print or the 5-year-old's handprint or something, they don't know what they're doing. So amazingly, out of these 282 laws in Hammurabi's Code, half of them deal with matters of contract. That's how important contracts have always been, going back to BC. So in this idea that only equals can contract, and if you keep in mind that our signature is our instrument of making a contract, we aren't contracting as equals today because we really don't understand what we're getting into. No common person knows that it's their straw man that they have suddenly, awakened when they sign a contract. They don't know the fine print on their, on all these things. We're told, sign here, it's standard all the time. And we say, okay, if it's standard, it's got to be okay, but it isn't. So I think we're not aware that when we sign contracts, we're really not doing it as an equal, and we're being taken advantage of.
Yeah, we're definitely being taken advantage of. There's no doubt about it. And the whole fact that they do it by stealth tells you or should tell somebody that somehow, in some way, this is not benefiting you. It's benefiting them, but it's not going to benefit you. And that's why you're kept in the dark, because if you did know what was going on, there's a lot of things you wouldn't agree to.
Right. You would effectively know that you were a slave. For instance, when you register your car. And now apparently the car dealer registers the car when they sell it to you. It's registered already. You just are sent the bill for the registration, and the DMV sends you the paperwork. They own the point of registration is to allow them to do whatever they want to with the car. They can impound it if you don't pay your parking tickets. So they have physical right to the car. You don't. You're just the driver. This is why you have a bloody driver's license.
Right. That's right. Plus, it's a means to extract more money from you. It's everything's about extraction. That's why
Right.
you're a slave. It's
when the cop pulls you over and says, "Show me your license and registration," he is establishing your connection with that VIN number vehicle.
right.
You are the one in whose fictitious name it's registered, and you are the one who is allowed to drive it by license, but it's really the state's car. I mean, people understood that their Mercedes that they paid $75,000 for, they don't own it. They just paid, it's laughable. You pay all this money plus gas, and it's not yours.
Right. And in many states, you have personal property tax on that vehicle. So try not paying your personal property tax and see if you own the car.
Right. It's hilarious, really.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And the thing is, I guess the most disturbing part of it, Sophia, is how many people are completely and totally oblivious to the setup. And I'll be the first to admit, it could be very complex to get into and to understand. And from my perspective, I'm not asking people to get into the bowels of it and get deep, deep, deep into the rabbit hole. You can if you want to. But even if you just, research it to the degree where it starts to make sense, you'll understand that this system is set up not to your benefit.
We need to contract with each other, Mike, through our own goodwill.
Well, that's how it used to be, right? It used to be a
Right.
handshake. A handshake would say, I promise to do this, and that's how the agreements were consummated. Today, everything is paperwork and money, and it's really out of control.
Once when I had a big flood in my house, and I had to rework a couple of my bathrooms. Anyway, it was a big job, and I had to call in a specialized, super duper expensive plumber because my other guy he just told me, I can't hook this up. It's too complicated for me. You're going to have to call a real plumber and a good one. So I called this guy. Everybody was very expensive. And then one guy took pity on me and said, all right, let me come over. I'll see what I can do. So what we thought would take an hour took 4 hours. And he's lying on his back. He's on my bathroom floor. And I'm telling him all about what the world is like. And he's listening. And I said, do you want me to keep going? Yeah, keep talking. Keep talking. So then at the end of 4 hours, he says, Sophia, do you know I've been here 4 hours? I said, yeah. I said, how much is it going to cost? He looks at me and he goes, a lot. I said, well, do you want me to pay you in DVDs and my inventory? Because I was selling a lot of DVDs at that time. I said, it's all about what I've told you. He goes, all right. I said, so how much would the money be? He said, well, probably about $300 or $400. I said, all right. Can I pay you that much of DVDs? He said, yes. So I gave him those, and that was fine.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. This is how we have to be. I gave him an education for 4 hours and then documentation that he could watch on his own. Not any, mechanics lien, you didn't pay me, so now I get to lien your car or lien your this or that. Not that a plumber would do that, but anyway, you can actually have these little experiences in your life if you ask for them and you offer them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the barter system. Like I said before, it's a handshake, an agreement, and you go off based upon each other's integrity to carry out whatever it is that each of you have agreed to. But unfortunately, in today's society, one of the things that the culture teaches is deception, to be deceitful, to gain something at any cost. If it benefits you, don't worry about how it hurts anybody else. It's about you. It's about you climbing the ladder. It's about you having everything that you want. Don't worry about how much damage that you leave around you, behind you, above you, below you. Don't worry about that. So, and that's part of the problem. I've seen that where they want to break down the whole aspect of people having integrity and coming to agreement between two people.
When we were better connected socially, Mike, it was more effective, this agreement and my word and your word and the handshake, because you would be shunned if you didn't keep your word.
Exactly.
You wouldn't be able to do that with anyone else. You'd never get anything. But in this very transient, really, socially nebulous world we live in, where people are not, they don't even show up when you tentatively say, okay, next Friday, let's do this, or they suggest it. And they'll blow you off so quickly when next Friday comes.
Yeah.
Because they never were serious about it. That's just another social, a cavalier thing you say. It's like saying, have a nice day. Oh, let's get together next Friday. And a person like me makes the mistake that, okay, we're going to get together on Friday. So I set that day aside, and then it's blown off by the other person. So even in that regard, I guess I'm different from the normal person. And I feel like if I say I'm going to do something, then I should really, really do my best to do that, or have a very good reason not to.
Yeah, and before when I asked the question about how would things be different, we're kind of getting into that now. We're getting into how would things be different under this world of contract law and commerce. You're not sovereign. You're not free. And there's a lot of things that we could be doing as sovereign beings, as free people, that don't require contracts. So many folks are just so entrained and they're so entangled and submerged in the system that even, I know me personally, when I try to have this conversation with folks, they just don't get it. They glaze over. They think I'm some kind of nut job because I'm talking about personal sovereignty and talking about how this process is a process that's not serving their best interests, that the process is in place to extract fees and fines and surcharges and, in the meantime, restrict what you can do. I mean, even when we talk about getting in your car, I mean, really? I mean, you need a driver's license to get in a car and go someplace. You have to register the car, fee for the license plate. In some states, they call it tags because you're
Right.
tagged. You know, you have to have insurance on the car. This whole thing, especially just driving your car, a simple thing like driving your car, is all about commerce. It's all about contracts. And just take a look at and assess what you pay, what is extracted from you personally, money-wise, in order to do something that shouldn't require any of that. You have to
Right.
pay for insurance. You've got to pay for your license plate renewal. You have to pay for your personal property tax on your car. If your state levies that, in North Carolina, they do. You have to pay your registration fee. You have to pay your license renewal fee. That's just your car. Take a look at it from that perspective. You know, just break it down and say, all right, let me just take an aspect of my life and let me take a look at how they're controlling it. Because it's all about control. Folks have to get their heads wrapped around it. Because if they don't, then this situation that we're in today, it's going to get worse because they're going to take more advantage because folks are ignorant to how it works.
Well, the car is really about paying all that money and all those drips and drabs to use their roads and to be able to go on them when you want, where you want. That's the cost of that quote unquote freedom. And your other option is to use public transport or walk or bike. And they're
Right.
going to move it all into bikes. You know, they're going to have us biking everywhere, which actually is dangerous because you fall off a bike and you can get very badly hurt. And it's cold. You can't protect yourself against weather. So really, in inclement weather, we're going to be stuck when we're all bike lanes, bike roads. And that's what Agenda 21 is
Yep.
bringing us to.
And the other thing, Sophia, just backing up a second, is what constitutes saying that the roads are their roads? That's something else that's been commandeered. The roads belong to the people, belongs to the public, but somehow that's all been turned around, and roads that have been paid for now they collect tolls.
The whole idea that we are, fined and charged and licensed to death.
Everything. You have to have a marriage license. Why do you have to have a license to get married? You have a death certificate, a certificate when you die. I mean, everything is licensed, everything is registered, everything has a certificate. It's just amazing. It really is. And if you take a step back and take a look at your life, in North Carolina here, with my practice, I have to purchase a privilege license to work. It's called a privilege license. And I have to pay every year for that license. Now, why is working a privilege? I thought working was a right. Don't I have a right to work?
Well, in the capacity that you work, I mean, I'm sure if you're a waitress or something, you don't have to pay a privilege license, but you're doing a special kind of work, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the state licenses that work. Massage therapists have to be licensed here. Masseuse and massage givers have to have a license.
Haircutters.
Yeah.
And so on. Yeah.
So I don't really understand. I mean, maybe because they touch other people or something? It has to do with health? What does it have to do with?
I don't know. I mean, that's going to be the argument. The argument's going to be, well, how do we know that person's qualified to do that? How do we know this? How do we know that? But it goes back to, how do we know things? Well, we would know things by reputation and integrity if we went back to the old days when those things meant something. And in my view, what's happened is over time, all of that's been thrown out the window. And now it's gotten to the nanny state where the state has come forward and the government's come forward and say, you know what? We can't trust anybody. We will take care of this. We will set the guidelines and the process, and we'll put the licensing in place and the certificates in place and the diplomas and so on and so forth. But you have to think to yourself, is the government really looking out for you, or is this another process of extracting money from everybody?
I think there's also an element of being able to prove to people in it. Like the marriage license is proof that you're married. The
But why do I need proof? Why does
Well,
anybody
maybe
need proof of that?
in the days when, we were more modest, people shacking up together, you could only do it if you were married and you would have to have a license. You can't just live with people. Maybe that was it. But I know now, I'm remembering something that I heard from a friend of mine who's doing massage, and she said that the reason they license for massage is to to make sure you're not doing prostitution. So
Yeah.
if you get a massage license, then there's a higher probability that you're not a prostitute. Because anyone can do massage, and they can do a lot of kinds of massage. So I guess if the state licenses you, it's proof. Birth certificate, proof that I was born. Death certificate, proof that so-and-so died. So I think this is why people have accepted these certificates and these licenses, because it makes you official, cleaner. They don't understand that it's really a greater control device, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can live with anyone you want to, and I know that people have over thousands of years without being married.
Common
But
law marriage.
exactly, but maybe it was considered socially more acceptable if you had a marriage license and you had a ceremony to commit you.
I'm only bringing this stuff up as food for thought. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should be running around willy-nilly with no sense of order. I'm not saying that at all. But the thing is, what I'm saying is that I don't think it's all there for a sense of order. I think it's there today, especially when we take a look at what is out there today and how many things are under contract, licenses, registrations, all those things. It's no longer, I don't believe, there primarily for safety, the public interest, and so on. It's become a mechanism in which they can extract revenue from people, plain and simple. I think it's completely overboard, my personal view.
Well, Mike, I do believe that they've made us into wealth producers in the form, I mean, some of us make money and we pay a lot of that in the form of income taxes to, we'll just call it the government. And so they strip us of our wealth. They'll do it on our mortgage. They'll do it on anything we borrow in the form of interest. I mean, it is hilarious to me and very sad that people pay 2.5 to 3 times the value of their house if they buy a house through this mortgage thing.
Right.
This instrument of mortgage, these loan documents. You're supposed to pay 3 times? Why? Because somebody is using you, they're squeezing you for 30 years and making a ton of money off you, and then you are told that's your house, but it's really not.
No, it's not. I mean, first of all, it's not your house if you have a mortgage, and even if you pay the house off, you have personal property taxes, and I have this discussion with folks all the time, like, I'm free because I have my houses paid for. I'm like, really? Try not paying your personal property tax, and let's see how much of that house you really own, because you won't be residing in it at some point if you continue down that path, because they will, by force, take it from you, unless you want to have a shootout at the OK Corral, at which point you're not going to be living in the house anyway. You'll be carrying you out in a pine box. So, like you're absolutely right, Sophia. The whole thing is set up to take wealth. It's, when you earn a paycheck and 40% of your paycheck never makes it into your bank account, that's slavery.
Well, sure. You're working for them. They see us as vehicles of wealth making that they can siphon from us, and we're ending up poorer and poorer and poorer. I mean, I heard a story of a couple that I knew a long time ago, and the mother died and left a house worth $200,000, and after all the taxes and this and that, they had nothing to speak of. They couldn't, actually it was nothing. They couldn't take anything. You might end up owing money, actually. It's really amazing to me, Mike. And what's amazing to me is that people agree to this. When I realized what mortgages were about in my 20s, I said to my mother, why? Why do people pay 2.5, 3 times for a house? Because this is how it's done.
Yep.
Everything, this is how it's done. And somehow we've got to get out from under that yoke, because that is a bad yoke. It really is.
Well, the bad yoke is the fact that people accept it, that they just look at it and say, well, that's just the way it works. I mean, I don't know what it is you're talking about, there's nothing to see here. Let's just move on. And, they're just not seeing how it is that their life is being controlled.
Right. And I heard a scary thing. They're offering free energy audits now. They'll send somebody over from the utility company and they'll tell you how you can improve things in your house to save energy, right? And thereby money. So what happens is when the guy from the power company comes over and he looks at your windows and he says, oh, you don't have dual pane windows. Those are big energy savers with the low E glass. And you don't have an on-demand water heater. Why are you heating water 50 gallons every day, keeping it hot, when you're only taking one shower a day and you're doing 2 loads of laundry? So you need this, you need this, you need this. These would be important improvements in your house. So why do they do that? They're not trying to be helpful. You know why they do that?
You're going to be put in a database.
Yeah, but this is really why. Once that information is entered about that property address into the database, you're not going to be able to sell the house until you make those upgrades.
Right.
And they will be so expensive. Most people can't put, thousands of dollars into windows and water heaters and insulation and this and that, and they will just not be able to get out of that house. They will die in it. You die stuck in that property, then they come in and they condemn it.
Well, that's what Agenda 21 is doing to businesses, right? Agenda 21
Yes.
comes in and says, oh, you know what? We're going to come in and take a look at whether you're up to code. And don't worry about it right now. I mean, your building is up and you have an old shop and so on. We have this going on down here where I am in the old part of town. And there's a lot of old buildings there. And there's a lot of businesses that are operating out of these old buildings. And I say old. I mean, some of these buildings are 70, 80, 90 years old. They won't tell them that they have to do anything right now. But when the time comes when you have to replace those windows, you have to replace that roof, you have to replace that door, those floors, those shingles, whatever it may be, you have to do it this way, because if you don't do it this way, then you can't operate. You're out of business until you get that done and you get it built to these specifications.
Right.
It's the same thing, and people will look at that and they're going to hear me say this. They're going to say, you're nuts, Mike, because all they're looking for is to make sure that it's safe. It's a sound construction. So what you're saying is it shouldn't be sound. All I'm going to say to folks who are saying that right now is you need to go down to your local town, take a look at some of these documents that are printed with regard to the codes. And also in my town, I took a look and they mentioned stakeholders they have to report back to. And I wrote to my local town and I said, who are the stakeholders? I never heard from them, Sophia. They never bothered to respond. The stakeholders, of course, are people that are invested in making sure that this goes down. They are not the public.
Yeah.
And just another point, not to commandeer this conversation, but, we talked about the taxes before and, 40 cents on a dollar you never see. And, folks have to ask themselves, if the government can print money at will, why do they need to extract it from you? Think about that.
I was reading this book, Who is Running America? The Bankruptcy of America, the Corporate United States, and the New World Order. Someone sent me a bunch of these documents, and I'm trying to understand all this in a hurry, partly so I could do this show, and partly because I haven't learned any of this. I have seen it before, but I've had too many people tell me, it's not true. Don't pay attention to that. It is not true. And now I think it is true. And I think we all need to probe this and get going, get it clear in our heads. But why do they milk us? Why do they have interest? Why do we have to pay them interest? I believe, Mike, that one reason they're doing this to siphon, but they use us as mules and donkeys. We're wealth producers, and they take a large portion of that wealth because they'll use that money to buy the world out from under our feet. That's how they own the world. They buy it, and we believe it because everything to us in our construct is if you buy something and you have the money to pay for it and I don't, well, you know what? It's yours.
Yeah.
So they have created this fake money and these interest schemes and these siphoning, policies that have gone on for, God, hundreds of years now, so they can buy the world out from under our feet.
Right, and keep you under their thumb. Plain
Right.
and simple, yep. Because if you have too much wealth, You get too big for your britches based upon their perspective. That just can't be. That can't stand. That's a big reason why this country has had the rug pulled out from under it. Because a country that has too much freedom, too much wealth, too many guns, it's going to get in the way of the agenda. Because when you have a country that is wealthy, has freedoms, it sees no value in becoming part of a quote unquote new world order or some global construct. None whatsoever. It's like, I'm okay, please go away. So, and they know that, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. That's why they're knocking the pegs out, the rungs out of the ladder here in the United States and other countries that were at one point very entrepreneurial, very wealthy, creative, imaginative. That's slipping away significantly day by day. I mean, I see it.
Mike, I see it a little bit differently.
Okay.
I do agree with you, but I have this other take on it, and I'd like to just voice that. I could be wrong, but I believe that America as the melting pot, as this integration of so many different nationalities and ethnicities through steady immigration, through the principle of people power and working. I mean, people came here. They came from where they were dissatisfied, and they came here to produce, to create new lives. And there was a lot of, I'll call it people energy going in the United States. And that was very admirable. And with it came some of the concepts you described, the freedom, the we're making our own country the way we want it. But really and truly, there was a melding of blood going on and genes. And I think it was the first experiment in creating this not too bright, entertainment addicted thing called the American. And you see this when they go as tourists to other countries. And they have their particular way of being. And they're harmless, it seems. They're kind of cute in their own way, the dumb American tourist. They're not responsible for what their government is doing in Iraq or Vietnam or anywhere, And I think that is what we're seeing now, really spreading through this country. We're seeing, then it was an export, and those people showed up. They wanted to see the world. They wanted to have a good time. But now I think we're seeing it all over the terrain of this country, and it's come through too much intermixing of strains that should have been kept distinct in order to retain their resilience, their intelligence, their selfhood. You know what I mean?
No, I do understand what you're saying.
And that's happening everywhere now through this multiculturalism. And it's downgrading the original groups, which had all their differences and that were all kind of intact and great in their own right. And the melded thing, generations down the road where all this is intermixed, isn't as good as any of the originals that went into its making.
That's a very valid point, Sophia, and actually I agree with you. And I guess maybe I should put my comment in context. What I was trying to say was, at one point in this country, we had the inspiration and the ingenuity, the entrepreneurial spirit, we had the wealth and the growth, but then there was phase 2 or phase 3 or phase 4 of the agenda, which then watered things down, put the whole dumbing down process into full gear.
Right.
Right. That's how I'm kind of looking at it. So in other words, if you look at it, say we were up here on the curve, and you guys can't see this, but Sophia can because on my video on, and then we reached an apex, right, at the zenith of a certain point of what this country was about or what it was trying to be, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, that is as far as it's going to go. Now take it down.
Right. I agree with you completely. At one time, it was all those things,
Yeah.
and people power was driving it. And then I think they really stole our souls through the Frankfurt School debasing of the culture, through the rock music and the drugs and the all that, the anti-establishment, all the stuff that Joe Atwill discusses in his podcast, that Dave McGowan has written about in his book, the social engineering. And now it's physical and biological engineering.
Yep.
And it's addiction to what I call the world of 2D, phones and entertainment.
It's we're at a point now where humanity really has to turn it around if we're ever going to turn the ship around, because I tell folks, people will ask me, they'll say, Mike, are you optimistic, pessimistic? And I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I see a lot of people waking up. I see a lot of folks like yourself and others that are doing the work and getting the word out there and getting the awakening communicated, and people are getting it. Some quicker than others, but I'm starting to see a rise in the amount of folks that are starting to get it. However, that being said, there's still a lot of people that are walking around very apathetic, a lot of folks in denial, and and therein lies the problem. I don't know what that critical mass number is. I know you and I have talked about this in the past. I don't know what that number is. I get asked that like I have some kind of calculator, that will calculate when the ship turns around. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but how do you feel about it? I mean, you think you're cautiously optimistic, don't know?
I have a suggestion for you. When people ask you what that number is, why don't you just throw out a different number every time? Just experiment with different ones, and after a while, you'll figure out the right number. You'll start to say that more and more.
Yeah.
Really, try it. Use a Masonic number. Why not?
Yeah, I should use 33. I'll just say it's 33.
Yeah. So what do I think? I don't know, Mike. I don't have a glass ball. I don't. We really just have today. We've got to start opening our eyes. We have to see things in new ways all the time. And maybe that's all we're here for, is just to see it and produce something in our own intention that reflects what we've just seen.
So that's a very metaphysical perspective.
You have to be, because on the physical, it's so dismal. It's almost scary, I wanted to say, yeah.
With this show, I really liked it because we covered a lot of ground and we talked about a lot of stuff, and we threw a lot of food for thought out there to the audience. And we're not claiming to be experts on this stuff, but I would highly recommend that whoever's listening to the show, and hopefully there are many of you, that you start to dig into this aspect about the contractual piece of how we're being governed and how the world works, that it's a system of commerce. And once you get your head wrapped around that, that part of it is a fact. I mean, that is what's there. But then to understand how that system of commerce affects and impacts your life, that's something that each and every person is going to have to look into for themselves.
Right, and how the system of commerce can shield agendas and incorporate you. I mean, this word incorporate and corporation, it incorporates you into those agendas without your knowledge and by your signature. I want you to post that documentary that I sent, The Nature of the Cage.
Okay.
About the straw man. So we have to regain our own resilience, our own functionality. We have to really be able to see, and we have to start caring a little bit about more than, what did you say earlier in the show? The price of burgers at Burger King?
Oh, yeah.
Old Navy. When is the sale at Old Navy?
Yeah, you got to break away from that, folks. I mean, you got to take your head out of the system. You're playing into the system of commerce when you're sitting there and wondering when the next sale at Old Navy is going to be, or, when Burger King is going to have a 2-for-1 special and so on. You're just feeding the beast, and you have to step away from that.
But Mike, could we do a little commercial for my magnesium cream and you just tell your story so that I can do some commerce?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And before I do that, let me just say one thing. For everybody that didn't get this, I think we mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you're really questioning about whether your town or your police department is a corporation, I want you to go to Dun & Bradstreet, and I want you to type in your police department. I want you to type in your mayor's office, type in the name of your town, and write me personally if your town does not pop up in Dun & Bradstreet, because if it pops up, that means it is a corporation.
And that's true. It's all in Dun & Bradstreet.
It's all in Dun & Bradstreet. So for those that are questioning this and wondering Go take a look for yourself. Now, the magnesium cream. So I was talking to Sophia about some of the products that she sells, and it was on our previous show, I believe. We were talking about iodine. And one of the things that Sophia mentioned to me is that she sells this magnesium cream, and it is excellent for relieving pain in the body. And so I had tennis elbow in my left elbow for the longest time. It was just dragging on, literally was dragging on for months, I guess. And so I bought the magnesium cream, and I would put the magnesium cream on my elbow. And I did that a couple times a day, 2 or 3 times a day. And after about 2 weeks, I noticed that the pain in the elbow had decreased significantly. I mean, when I say significantly, I mean a lot. And then after about a month or so, all the pain was gone. And right now I have no pain in the elbow. And it was lingering for months. And I mean, it really hurt. It hurt a lot. And I started putting the cream on it, and it's feeling very good today.
Ta-da!
There you go. I also used the sunscreen when we went to the beach 3 weeks ago, and that worked great too. Except I forgot to tell you, I guess you have different shades of it.
Yeah.
I looked very, very white on the beach.
Right. That's this pure white zinc oxide. Actually, there's a new sunscreen. I'm going to be carrying that exclusively as soon as I sell out of this. It's called Bali Block. I have one on my website right now, the cocoa tinted. So what happened was a friend of ours went to Indonesia, to Bali, where they do make a very simple, very effective sunscreen, and it's tinted with cocoa. And they put that on their skin, and it's a matte blocking sunscreen. So my friend Brian came back and he told the biochemist who makes all this other sunscreen about this formula from Bali, and he put it together in his lab. This stuff has 4 ingredients in it, Mike. It has zinc oxide, 25%, so it's giving you a 30-something SPF. It's got coconut oil, organic, and it's got cocoa as the tint, and beeswax. So those are the 4 ingredients. It smells like chocolate, and it's fantastic. It's tinted dark. I named it, I got to name it Bali Block, and it is a surf screen, very wonderful for people who do heavy aquatic stuff. And then a couple of weeks ago, after I thought about this and got another one of my brainwaves, I called up the biochemist and I said, hey, can you make that in white? Just make it, put vanilla extract in it. So now we have Bali Vanilla. And it's not commercial yet. I got some of the pre-market ones. It's fantastic. It's white. It'll blend into your skin, but you will look a little white if you put it on thickly. Lasts forever. Seriously. You can swim 2 miles in the ocean, surf all afternoon, it'll still be on. And it's vanilla, zinc oxide, coconut oil, and beeswax. So Bali Vanilla. That is not on the website right now, but I urge people, try Bali Block. It's wonderful.
When will you have it? Because I'm going back to the beach in a month.
Well, Bali Block you can get now,
Okay.
the darker one, and that'll work for you because you have the coloring for it, and it blends in. A friend who's very pale, she put it on her legs the other day, and it blended right in. So chocolate Bali Block is available, and vanilla is coming. I'm going to get some pre-market ones from him. I just have to call him and ask him to make me some. But it's fantastic. I'm only going to sell those 2 next year, Bali Vanilla and Bali Regular.
Okay. And I also want to let you know that the iodine show that we did is still hot. I mean, a lot of people are still hitting that show, so hopefully folks are buying some iodine.
Yeah, there was a lot of iodine that moved through my little avatarproducts.com is my online store. And then it slowed down, but people were also buying the Lugol's iodine that I sell, which is called Lugol's Plus.
Right.
And that has selenium in it. I'm just going to mention this. Selenium is a very important cofactor in the metabolism of iodine. And one thing, people who really get into iodine, if you want to maximize what iodine does in the body, eat 3 Brazil nuts a day. Because Brazil nuts, if you Google them, they have so much selenium, they're just off the charts compared to everything else on the planet. So when I started doing iodine, I was buying Brazil nuts. And then, of course, one day you run out of Brazil nuts and you forget to buy them again. And it's a year later that you go, oh my God, I wasn't eating Brazil nuts for all this time. So this Lugol's Plus iodine has selenium in it, along with zinc, along with something that comes from the soil called fulvic. And these are very important metabolic acids to using iodine, maximizing the effect of iodine in your body. So I don't have to buy Brazil nuts anymore.
Excellent. Well, look, I just want to say that it was an absolute pleasure, as it always is when I speak to you.
You're sweet.
No, I'm serious. We have great conversations, and I know this one today we covered a lot of ground. It was very wide-ranging, but it's always a lot of fun when you're on the show.
Thank you, Mike. That's very kind of you, and I love our discussions too. They're energetic, they flow, they allow me to spin off and you to do the same, and that's the best kind of interview.
Yeah, I agree. Talk about what we want to talk about, so very freewheeling. Anything else, Sophia, that you wanted to talk about? Now you have your website.
Yes, Avatar Products, About the Sky, my blog page. I'm going to start putting things on there that, turmeric for whitening teeth was the latest one. That's a fantastic way to not bleach your teeth, not erode the enamel, and get really nice white teeth. Takes a little while. You got to do it for a couple of months, but it works. So that's it. My blog page can be reached now by sofiasmallstorm.com.
Oh, okay. Good.
You have to remember Sophia with an F, S-O-F-I-A. Yeah, so that's a new little innovation. But yeah, Mike, no, that's about it. I got my magnesium commercial in, which I roped you into doing, which makes me very happy.
Yeah. Well, it didn't take much roping because my elbow was hurting a lot, so I'm glad it worked.
Right, for $10 or whatever it costs, $9.
Exactly. All right, so we should get together maybe next month again if you'd like.
I would love to, because there's more that I have to talk about. I will send you some more ideas, and
all right.
Going.
And send me any links that you want to include in this show. I know you sent me something here in my email. I'll put whatever it is that you want in the show notes so that folks can take a look.
Okay, I will be having little leaflets that Anita sent me that are actually on her website in PDF form. You can print them and you can staple them together and make them a booklet for yourself. You can create your own little library effectively of this material and then pass it out to others. So, okay, Mike, thank you.
All right, Sophia, have a great evening, and I'll catch up with you. I'll email. And that concludes my interview with Sofia Smallstorm, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Sophia has two websites. There's www.aboutthesky.com, where you can listen to her very popular podcasts and read some of her newsletters. And Sophia is also the proprietor of avatarproducts.com. Both links will be in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.